All right, let's peel back more than 100 years of movies, TV shows, and pop culture to get to the source. We're talking about the terrifying first encounter with the most famous vampire in history. We're going to dive right into the opening chapters of Bram Stoker's Dracula and see the horror unfold through the eyes of the very unfortunate Jonathan Harker.
So you gotta forget everything you think you know about vampires for a minute. Before all the modern takes, there was this, the original 1897 novel. And what's really cool is how it's written. It's not a straightforward story. It's all told through letters, journal entries, and newspaper articles. This makes the horror feel so much more real, so immediate and personal. So let's see how it all starts for our main guy.
And here he is. Meet Jonathan Harker. He's a young, up-and-coming lawyer, basically the definition of a modern, logical man from London. He's super diligent, does his homework, and before he sets off for Transylvania to close a real estate deal, he makes sure to do his research. He thinks he's ready for anything. He is not.
Harker's journey by train isn't just a trip across Europe. It feels like he's traveling back in time. He even writes in his journal that he feels like he's leaving the West and entering the East. He's leaving his neat, orderly world behind and heading into what he calls one of the wildest and least known portions of Europe. You can already feel the first crack in his modern confidence.
So he gets to this little inn, and a letter is waiting for him. The first ever contact he has with his mysterious client. It says, "My friend, welcome to the Carpathians. I am anxiously expecting you. At the Borgo Pass, my carriage will await you and will bring you to me. Your friend, Dracula." It sounds polite, right? But it's also very precise, very commanding.
And this is where things start to get weird. The second Harker mentions Dracula's name at the inn, the whole mood just dies. The friendly innkeeper and his wife get all secretive and scared. They start making the sign of the cross and just refuse to talk about him. And Harker, our logical Englishman, is just totally confused by what he sees as a bunch of old, silly superstitions. I mean, it gets intense. The innkeeper's wife is so upset she literally gets on her knees, begging Harker not to go. She shoves a crucifix into his hand and warns him about the date. For Harker, this is all a bit much, but you can tell he's starting to feel just a little bit uneasy. That local fear, it's starting to rub off on him.
And, it's almost funny. Harker's greatest strength, his habit of doing thorough research, it completely backfires on him here. On the coach, he hears the other passengers whispering these strange, fearful words. So what does he do? He pulls out his dictionary to look them up. And what he finds is basically a list of his worst nightmares. We're not talking about folklore anymore. These are words for pure evil.
So picture this. It's a desolate mountain pass, middle of nowhere, and the public coach is about to just drop him off and leave. Then right on cue, a private carriage appears out of the gloom. It's pulled by these huge black horses, and it's here for him. This is it, the final leg of the journey, and the final goodbye to the normal world.
And this is our first real taste of the supernatural. It's not some spooky ghost, it's this driver. His strength is just shocking. Harker says his grip is like a grip of steel, and his eyes, they seem to glow red in the dark. Harker can't even see the guy's face, but these little details are setting off some serious alarm bells.
Now, as Harker is getting into this creepy new carriage, one of the other passengers whispers this line from a famous poem. For the dead travel fast. Chilling, right? But the creepiest part? The mysterious driver, who shouldn't have been able to hear it, hears it, and he smiles. A smile that shows off some very sharp, very white teeth.
Okay, if there was any doubt left about this driver, this next moment just blows it out of the water. A pack of wolves surrounds the carriage, and Harker is frozen with fear. The driver, though, he just stands up, makes a single gesture, and they all back off. He has total command over these terrifying creatures.
And then they arrive. A huge, crumbling castle looming in the darkness. The driver just vanishes with the carriage, leaving Harker all alone in this massive, dark courtyard. After what feels like forever, the huge front door groans open, and he finally meets his host.
Out comes the Count with that famous line, but what's really weird is how he does it. He just stands there, perfectly still like a statue. He doesn't step over the threshold to greet Harker. He waits for Harker to come inside first. It's a subtle little power play, a sign of ancient rules that Harker has no clue about.
So let's pause and look at our two main players here. On one side, you have Jonathan Harker, young, modern professional. On the other, you have Count Dracula, an ancient nobleman, but with this weirdly cold touch and a grip that's just as strong as his freaky drivers. You can just feel the clash coming, right? The modern world versus something very, very old and very hungry. At first, Harker probably breathes a sigh of relief. Dracula seems polite, well-educated, a good host. But then the weird little details start stacking up. 1, he never eats with Harker, ever. 2, there are no mirrors, anywhere in the castle. And 3, even though fires are lit and meals are served, Harker never ever sees a single servant.
And then comes the line that just rips the polite mask right off. Wolves start howling outside, a sound that terrifies Harker. But Dracula's reaction? His eyes light up, and he says it's music. It's a huge moment that shows just how completely alien he is, how connected he is to the darkness.
And when Harker actually gets a good look at him up close, it's not pretty. The polite nobleman facade starts to crumble when you see the reality. We're talking about super shark teeth that stick out over his lips, pale ears with pointy tips, hair growing in the palms of his hands, and foul breath. The charming host is actually physically repulsive.
All right, so all that creeping dread Harker's been feeling this whole time, it's about to explode into pure, undeniable terror. His business trip is about to take a seriously dark turn.
This is the moment the floor drops out from under him. He decides to have a little look around the castle, maybe see the sights, only to find that every single door is locked and bolted from the outside. He's not a guest. He's an inmate. The castle isn't a temporary home. It's a cage.
You can just feel the panic in his journal entries. They go from being a simple travel diary to a record of absolute terror. His logical, rational brain is just short-circuiting. He's a modern man stuck in a Gothic nightmare, and he has no idea what's going on.
And this quote, this says it all. The calm, collected lawyer is completely gone. He admits he's reduced to a primal state of panic, just running through the halls, trying every locked door, completely crushed by how helpless he is. The trap has been sprung.
So let's just recap the situation. The host? He's a jailer. The house he entered, of his own free will, it's a prison. And that simple business deal he came to close? Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. The horror is no longer just a feeling or a superstition. It's real.
And that's the horrifying question that drives the rest of the book, isn't it? Harker is trapped, sure, but why? What does this monster actually want with him? Because whatever Dracula is planning, it reaches far beyond his castle walls, all the way to London. The real nightmare, for everyone, is just getting started.